In Monday's red and blue political roundup, President Trump is expressing optimism about working with Mexico's new president. Andrés Manuel Lopez Obrador won the country's election in a landslide Sunday. The former mayor of Mexico City campaigned on ending corruption and standing up to President Trump. In the Oval Office Monday, Mr. Trump discussed how the two leaders might work together.
I just spoke with the president-elect of Mexico. We had a great conversation, about a half an hour long. We talked about border security. We talked about trade. We talked about NAFTA. We talked about a separate deal, just Mexico and the United States. We had a lot of good conversation. I think the relationship will be a very good one. We'll see what happens, but I really do believe it's going to be a very good one.
Joining me now from Washington is Kevin Cirilli. He is chief Washington correspondent for Bloomberg. Kevin, thanks for being with us. Everyone wants to read the tea leaves about how President Trump and President Obrador will get along. We just heard the president talk about his conversation with the president-elect of Mexico. What are some of the immediate issues that the two of them may see eye to eye on?
I'm not sure there's much they see eye to eye on. I think that the clear differences that have emerged are on immigration first and foremost, and also on international trade policy. Look, the president has forecasted that a decision on the North American Free Trade Agreement, or NAFTA, is not likely to come before the midterm elections. But he has signaled, especially to the markets, that he has a strong preference for negotiating bilateral trade deals, first separate with Mexico and a separate trade deal with Canada. Now, that actually has support amongst the far-left progressive wing, as well as the conservative base of President Trump's political movement. Then you get into a topic like immigration, and let's just be frank here, very, very little common ground. Right. And, you know, as you just mentioned, President Trump said on Sunday he will not sign a deal on NAFTA until after the midterms. Is the White House hopeful about working on a new deal with President-elect Obrador? Well, I think when you actually look at the political constituencies that these two presidents represent, they're night and day. I mean, this is a much more progressive president than current President Peña Nieto. And President Trump is obviously representing the conservative movement. And when you look again at sort of the immigration debate that has festered here within the United States, and you compare it and contrast it, really, with what's going on in Mexico, it's going to be very difficult for there to be any type of comprehensive immigration reform done before the midterms. We know that domestically. But then when you actually take a look at where the debate is headed, when the potential Democratic 2020 frontrunners, people like Senators Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, are calling for the complete removal and really axing of the immigration control program, ICE, I mean, that's really night and day with where Republicans are. Well, we also, you know, President Trump also campaigned on building that wall and getting it paid for by Mexico. So is there any of a greater sense where Obrador, you know, stands on paying for a wall? He says it's a non-starter. And that has polled significantly when you look at Mexico polls as something that is a non-starter for both for conservatives in Mexico as well as more liberal-minded politicians. Somehow that's not surprising. All right, let's move to another topic. We're just a week away from the date the president said he would announce his Supreme Court nominee. During Monday's meeting with the Prime Minister of the Netherlands, Mr. Trump discussed the process. Let's listen.
During the morning, I interviewed and met with 4 potential justices of our great Supreme Court. They are outstanding people. They are really incredible people in so many different ways, academically and every other way. And I had a very, very interesting morning. We'll make a decision on the United States Supreme Court, the new justice. That'll be made over the next few days, and we'll be announcing it on Monday. And I look forward to that. I think the person that is chosen will be outstanding.
Kevin, what can you tell us about the front runners for that opening?
Well, look, I think that there were several interviews today, and in fact, my colleagues at Bloomberg reporting that appeals court judge Amy Coney Barrett was one of the folks that President Trump met with today to discuss again that replacement for on the Supreme Court. She is someone who is that progressives are already trying to say is incredibly conservative, particularly on her previous comments regarding Roe v. Wade. When you look at the politics of this, look, whoever the president nominates is going to have to be a centrist in order to get a confirmation before midterm elections. People like Senator Susan Collins, a Republican from Maine, as well as centrist Democrat Senator Joe Manchin, a Democrat from West Virginia who's up for re-election in November, they have said, quite frankly, they're looking for a centrist. They are not looking for an ideologue to be a replacement on the Supreme Court. That's where these things on these important issues on Roe v. Wade, for example, become such crucial issues for whomever the president is nominated, and we're expecting that on Monday.
So because the White House is likely afraid of a prolonged confirmation process, they don't want this to go past the midterms, do you think then President Trump might be more likely to make his first candidate somewhat more moderate in the hopes that it will get through?
You know, here's what I'll say. I spoke with several sources in the past couple of days following all of this fallout regarding SCOTUS. And here's the thinking, is that the president is likely going to try to pick someone who leans more conservative, obviously, but also someone who can get through. And in order to get that confirmation, they've got to win centrist support. And just look last week. I mean, last week, the Supreme Court ruled on such crucial economic as well as on an immigration case, whether it's taking on labor unions or it's on immigration. I mean, this is a crucial time that the courts we've seen are weighing in almost, I mean, really in real time on this president and this administration's decisions.
Sure, and a lot of recent rulings could be overturned. So yeah, there's a lot at stake. All right, moving on yet again. In an interview with ABC's George Stephanopoulos, President Trump's former personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, says his first loyalties are to his family and country, not President Trump. Cohen once said he would take a bullet for the president. So how is the White House responding to Cohen's recent interview?
Well, look, I mean, I think we have to go by what the president has said previously. I mean, first and foremost, he seemingly signaled several months ago that he was willing to stand by his close personal attorney and fixer, Michael Cohen. This is someone who has a deep understanding of the Trump organization, as well as President Trump's most inner workings and the folks within the president's apparatus. But secondly, we've seen in recent months the president distance himself not only from the likes of Michael Cohen, but also from his previous campaign co-chairman Paul Manafort, who was charged with conspiring against the United States and is currently in jail. So as this has continued to escalate, we've seen the president try to separate himself from these individuals. But that explosive interview, I mean, it really was explosive to hear Michael Cohen, someone who has been in lockstep, really almost someone who many think was just as close, if not as close, to the president during previous time periods as Roger Stone. To see him say that his first loyalty is to his family and his country, there's really no other way to interpret that he was distancing himself from President Trump.
Right. All right. Now, finally, President Trump is meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin later this month. National Security Advisor John Bolton just returned from Moscow, where he met with Putin, and he said the two discussed alleged Russian election meddling. Earlier, we spoke with some tech reporters who say the meddling is continuing. Their reporting is showing that. So do you expect this to be a big discussion point between the two presidents? There's no question that the administration regarding Mr. Bolton are already signaling that they are going to have to somehow address this in this upcoming meeting, July 16th in Finland. They're going to have to do that. And that's point number one. Point number two is that the political optics around this so close to the midterms is definitely something that is going to be carefully observed. But point number three is that this is not just about Russia's involvement in and meddling in the U.S. election, but it's also extending far-reaching implications on a host of national security concerns, whether it's their annexation of Crimea or whether it's their meddling in energy markets. So this is a very tense geopolitical meeting that the stakes, quite frankly, are just as high as it was in Singapore when the president met with North Korea leader Kim Jong-un. And finally, I would note the importance that the private sector plays here in working with government officials, Republicans and Democrats alike, in how they have to better prepare themselves ahead of the midterm elections. All of those parties, private sector included, are going to be watching for that July 16th meeting to see what type of signals President Putin as well as President Trump are signaling towards the private sector. No doubt this will be a carefully watched meeting from a lot of sources. Kevin Cirilli, thank you. Thank you.